strong informal education program for visitors to our lab and the public. And one of the major things we do is develop and disseminate educational resources about weather and climate. And this is very exciting to us that we have such a weather and climate focus in the NGSS. So we're very excited about that. The reason we develop weather and climate educational resources is that we are located at the National Center for Atmospheric Research. And so we have a mandate to connect the public and K-12 and undergraduate educators and students to weather and climate science. So it's really exciting to see the weather and climate called out in the NGSS. So we're attempting to align our current resources to the NGSS and also use the NGSS to inform future development of resources. So I'm going to describe to you the process I had there. Unfortunately, there's a globe that seems to be covering half my slides. So just listen to me. From what we've learned, or what I've learned, I shouldn't say we, I've just been sort of going through this process. I'm telling you about my individual process, but there's sort of an ideal recipe for using the NGSS in developing instructional resources, making a performance expectation that's based on the NGSS, and then fitting that performance expectation with a learning goal, then developing an assessment that fits with the performance expectation and goal, and defining classroom activities that will accomplish this learning. And so this process is, sorry, next. I seem to have lost the ability to change my slides here. Oh, here we go. There we go. So this process is really encouraging us to use backward design, and that's great that the NGSS helps us identify the desired results, those big ideas and skills. The big ideas are like the DCI and the NGSS, and the skills being the science and engineering practices. So it's wonderful that we can go from there, then develop an assessment based on that, and then consider the learning events. And where we seem to have a little more trouble is in retrofitting existing, or I'm having a little trouble, is in retrofitting existing activities. That can be a challenge, and that's why I included this picture of duct tape. Hopefully we don't have to use too much duct tape in retrofitting existing activities or learning events with the new NGSS, but it could be a little clunky, and so that's a concern that I have. So here is my personal strategy for minimizing duct tape. Step one was to learn from others. I took a workshop at McREL that it was a version of their Designing Effective Science Instruction workshop, and it was offered this spring with an NGSS angle, and I found that very helpful. I'm not sure if they're still offering those, but I found it very helpful. And then in 2 activities through Spark, rejuvenating our existing activities, our existing learning resources with the NGSS practices and DCI, and then also forming collections of existing learning activities that address the NGSS-based performance expectations. So I'm going to describe to you a bit how I did this, or I've been doing this. So for individual learning resources, I've been correlating them with NGSS components, the science and engineering practices, the DCI, and the cross-cutting concepts. At that point, I consider revising the learning goal to see if we need to revise to fit with the NGSS that are there, and then revise the assessment and consider the learning events as well. But that, that process, that's a slightly clunkier process. But the slightly more streamlined process is more in line with the kind of ideal backward design process is these teaching boxes or resource collections that I've been making, where I've been looking at, oh dear, look, resource. Oh, here we go. So I've been looking at the educational resources from a broader perspective, and starting with a performance expectation that's derived from the NGSS, translating that into a learning goal, and then considering assessment and providing a suite of learning activities that teachers can pick and choose from. So that's one way that I've been finding it easiest to align with the NGSS, is to sort of, well, view things inside the box, but inside this teaching box sort of model. And I can show you, I have an example here of what I mean by that. And so here's a screenshot of a teaching box we have in progress. This is a section of the clouds teaching box about learning about how clouds form. So this is for upper elementary level. And I started with, I'm going to use my little tools here. I started with the standards and choosing standards that fit with this topic, and then developed a performance expectation from those. It says here, if you can't read it, students who demonstrate understanding can use a model to describe the effects of air pressure, water vapor, and tiny particles in the air on cloud formation. From that, I developed a more concise goal. Students learn about the ingredients needed to make a cloud and the role that air pressure and temperature play in cloud formation. And then this section about the activity includes the assessment. Students experiment with a simple model to learn about the ingredients needed to make a cloud and the role that air pressure and temperature play in cloud formation. Students' learning is assessed through a writing assignment in which students describe a plan for how they would fill their classroom with clouds. So this activity then links to a number of those classic cloud in a bottle activities, but gives that context of the NGSS and assessment. So a few happy surprises I've had while aligning activities. I've been really happy with the connections to the Common Core standards that are listed at the bottom of each NGSS matrix. And I've been more apt to link to Common Core, ELA, and math standards probably because they are listed there at the bottom, and I wind up browsing to them. And so I think those interconnections are really valuable. I've also been really happy with the science and engineering practices in the NGSS. It's a wonderful way to outline the specific skills students build through activities. They're not just doing inquiry, but there are lots of different parts of the process that the skills that they need to build, and it's great to outline which of those skills they're getting. And then I have a few unsolved mysteries, and if you have any solutions to these, let me know. But I'm not entirely sure that the way I am going about aligning educational resources to the NGSS is going to be consistent with the way states and districts are going to implement the NGSS. So my attempt to make things useful for teachers may, not work out. But so yeah, I'm trying to stay tuned in to how that's working. And then I'm not entirely sure what to do with wonderful classroom learning experiences that don't fit very neatly with the NGSS. And so I think, those tend to surface, and sometimes we can figure it out, and sometimes it would take such a big renovation and so much duct tape that is it worthwhile. And so that's something that I've been dealing with too. So with that, if you do have any wonderful solutions for me, my email's listed up here, and or if you'd just like to talk about any of this, I'm really open to talking to others about how they're doing this, and I'd love to be part of the community of people who are trying to figure this out. And if you're interested in Spark's educational resources, please visit spark.ucar.edu. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. That was really helpful to look through and to hear from your experiences, too. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our alignment workshop that we had last week, and then we'll hear from Matt and also Laura and some of you. So first we had a GLOBE Alignment workshop last week. It was funded by NSF, and we had 22 GLOBE members participate in 6 teams. Worked really hard for 2.5 straight days. The teams were split up in K to 2, 3 to 5, 2 middle school teams, and 2 high school teams. We based the alignment process on the 3 OER achievement rubrics. So you can see, let's get the markup tool up here. So this is where the rubrics were, and so participants would go through and list every single resource and compare it to the 3 rubrics. The rubric 1, 2, and 7. We also looked at practices, DCIs, and cross-cutting concepts. So here you can see the practice, the DCI, and cross-cutting concepts. So they were aligned for both classroom instruction as well as assessment. This is an example of one of the forms that they filled out. So this is the kindergarten standard. Make observations to determine the effect of sunlight on Earth's surface. And so each of our different resources, here we have surface temperature protocol, would get a score for classroom instruction as well as assessment. Next steps. The team is currently working on compiling the results, and we hope to have a document for review in December. We'll have the GLOBE community review it in January and February, hopefully in this time frame. And then we will follow up with additional webinars on the alignment process. And we hope to have this document up. I'm sorry? And we'll have this document up on the GLOBE website. So you can learn more about GLOBE and NGSS on our webinars page, and as well as email me, especially if you're interested in doing the GLOBE-NGSS product or learning more about what we did. So now I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Matt Gilmore, who will share about his experiences from the workshop as well as what he's working on with his university and state.
Thank you, Kristen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So it's nice to speak to all of you today. It's my pleasure. I'm actually one of the newest or most recently trained GLOBE trainers. So Dr. Laura Munsky and I went out to Boulder over the last summer in June and got trained. And so I'm brand new to GLOBE and brand new to NGSS. So I've been surrounding myself with lots of people that are who are the experts really, like Laura and then some of the people in the Department of Teaching and Learning here at UND. And so I wanted to give credit to those folks as part of my talk today, because it's only through discussions with them that I've actually realized some of the issues that we're going to talk about today. I first got interested in K-12 outreach when I was a graduate student at Texas A&M. I worked with a 2nd grade school teacher in Dallas on some Project Atmosphere curriculum development for 2nd graders, and so that's how I first got interested in outreach, and so I've continued that, and then it was great to find GLOBE last summer. So, and we're just now planning for our first workshop, and so some of what we'll be talking about today, Laura and I will be in reference to how we can best prepare for those workshops, and perhaps others that are having GLOBE workshops can learn from this as well. So let's see. I don't appear to have a slide advancer, so maybe I can have Kristen advance the slide for me. So yeah, so one of the takeaways that we had was becoming familiar with the NGSS and aligning the teaching units with the NGSS will likely make UND and the Dakota Science Center more competitive for state grants. That's one of the discussion points that I had with Lars Helgeson, Dr. Lars Helgeson at UND, and Laura Munsky in one of our meetings. And Lars was suggesting to us that because North Dakota would be creating their state standards based upon the NGSS, then it would be great to be out ahead of that in our preparations and then make us more competitive for funds, which then could fund things such as GLOBE workshops. So we wanted to raise that. I want to raise that as a possible discussion point for later too. What are the people in the audience thinking in terms of their local states? Do you think your state will be adopting NGSS for their state standards or not? And how will that impact your planning for future GLOBE workshops? So does Laura have anything that she would like to add at this point to that point? I'm not sure if she has audio.
Yes. Laura,
yeah, no, we just, for us, when our state adopts the NGSS, that won't be the only standards. There'll still be some science standards outside of that. And so we're hoping that any of the GLOBE activities that don't fall neatly into NGSS will be able to tie to those other science standards.
All right, thank you, Laura. So I guess, Kristen, if you could advance the slide for me, please. And so another point that came up, and this was in discussion that I had with Marcy Seavey, who was the head of the alignment workshop that I attended last week. She suggested that pre-service teachers who know the NGSS and have practiced that alignment during their, looks like my, I'm sorry, my computer's restarting here. It looks like I'm going to try to continue talking here. Those people, those pre-service teachers that have already become familiar with the standards, they're going to be a lot more competitive for jobs in the future, and also no matter where they go for their future jobs. So regardless of whether their state adopts NGSS, that they would be more competitive for those jobs. And so that is seen as a priority for our Department of Teaching and Learning here at UND, is to make the students aware of, the pre-service teachers aware of these standards so that they will be competitive for those jobs. Laura, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that point?
I guess from our point of view, the more practice that they have with matching the standards to their lesson plans, the better qualified they'll be for the jobs that they'll be interviewing for.
Okay, thank you. So my next slide is that retired teachers, and Laura's going to really probably have more to say about this than I will, but that retired teachers can be a valuable resource for unit building, and Laura will give some examples about that in just a second. One of the challenges, of course, is for the teachers to become familiar with the NGSS first. If they're retired, maybe they haven't, they don't know much about it yet. So just like all of us, we're learning about it. And then, of course, another challenge that people have mentioned is just navigating the GLOBE website, trying to find those right resources to put into those units. And so maybe Laura can talk about some examples that she has from the Dakota Science Center.
Science Center, we have retired teachers that are master teachers, and they volunteer to write lesson plans for us, and they will be the main resource that we will have to tie the GLOBE activities to the new standards. And so we are, at this point, we are familiarizing them with the NGSS, and one of the teachers has developed a quick reference for NGSS that is available on our website for teachers. So we're hoping that that will make them more comfortable using the NGSS standards. And then before we do the workshop, our retired teachers would like to see us gather into folders that we would provide on a flash drive everything needed to teach a certain segment of the GLOBE, because they have found that it's very confusing and very time-consuming to find everything on the GLOBE website. And they think that by having it all together for the teachers, it's more likely that the teachers would use the resources.
Thank you, Laura. So the next point is that as a result of the GLOBE-NGSS workshop from last week, the hope is that teachers will have the guidance about which and how well the GLOBE activities and protocols will align with each of the performance standards within the NGSS, just as Kristen was talking about earlier. And in so doing, then those teachers will have guidance about how to put their units together. So they won't have to spend so much time trying to match things up. So we're really excited about that as one of the outcomes from the workshop last week. And maybe if Kristen had anything that she wanted to add to that, that would be fine.
Yeah, I think it was really helpful to have people that were familiar with GLOBE as well as familiar with how this would actually work in a classroom. And so that was really one of the highlights to have at the workshop. And it was really nice to see how we can have lots of different people from different areas working together on the alignment process.
I would agree with that. I guess the next point that I have is something that Lisa had brought up earlier, which was the backwards design concept. Because I come from a science background and not a teaching and learning background, this was all new to me when I went to a new professor workshop, and that's where we learned about Dr. D. Fink's book from University of Oklahoma, Creating Significant Learning Experiences, and he talked about backwards design and how it's important to identify the learning goals and assessment first, and then choose the content and activities that go with that. And so that was really exciting for me at the NGSS Globe workshop to see that that's how NGSS is designed, that you identify those goals and assessments first and then choose the content and activities that go with that. So that was really exciting that that's being done on the K-12 level. And so now I guess I'll hand it off to Kristen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you, Laura, also. It's really nice to hear both of your perspectives, so really, really helpful. We have a few people on the call that were also participated last week, so we'd like to also hear from you as well as people from other walks, some people that are new to GLOBE, some people that are here to learn about the alignment process. So each of you, we have 3 questions that we'd like to hear from you, and you could unmute your phone or feel free to chat, to type anything into the chat window also. So I'd like to hear, what are your organization's alignment goals? And if you're a GLOBE partner, you can also add to that if you have goals that are similar to the overall GLOBE, but also relevant for your state or partnership.
Hi, this is Lisa. I guess I'll start. So we try to serve a national audience, and so we are trying to align to NGSS in the hopes that, well, even if 10 of the states adopt it, then we're hopefully being helpful there. But yeah, it seems like a nice opportunity to connect with standards that multiple states use.
Great, thanks. I see a couple other people from UCAR as well as Maria from the DR. I'm wondering if you have anything else you'd like to add. Susan typed into the chat, we're working on a format for teachers to easily utilize. Great, that was definitely something that came up at our workshop also, just being able to provide that to teachers. Anybody else? Sheila says, National Energy Education Project is aligning to NGSS as needed. I find our kits align well with science and engineering practice. Great. I think we have a few people on here from NREL, and I'm wondering if they want to contribute to that also. But I think that's nice to hear the National Energy Education Project is working on that too.
We're somewhat aligning right now. We're actually trying to align. This is Marcus from NREL. We're aligning with the Colorado state standards, everything that we're developing, and then eventually we will try and align with the national or the NGSS. But since Colorado hasn't adopted yet, most of our teachers come from Colorado. Even though we'd like to disseminate our curriculum throughout the nation, most of them that come to our workshops are from Colorado, so that's where we're concentrating right now.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. We're going to move on to the next question. What are your alignment challenges and needs? It was really helpful to hear for me to hear from both Lisa and Matt and Laura talk about different challenges that they saw. And I'm curious, what types of challenges do you and your organization see for alignment? Feel free to just jump on the line.
You mean you can talk and you can be heard?
Yes, please.
Oh, and that's a lot better than writing. Okay, what we're finding is that so many teachers focus down into the core content standards and so on. It's hard to get them to actually learn the core disciplinary idea and the necessary foundational concepts around it so that they can actually keep that big picture, so that, for example, energy has many cross-cutting concepts and you can go anywhere with it. But if you just pick a form of energy like sound out of a hat, that whole idea of contextualizing it is lost. And so we're trying to develop a methodology whereby you keep returning and making sure, and through like just kind of an ongoing assessment, where are the kids in terms of understanding this within the big picture of energy, use, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Yes. I see Matt
okay.
shaking his head also. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else like to share your alignment challenges?
One thing that we have found helpful is to take the entire module or the entire week-long unit that we want the teachers to use and to give them a template for using the 5E instructional strategy. And once they have that and they've done that a few times, then they seem to understand how to incorporate GLOBE into the classroom better.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
I think I'll add one more point related to the last two comments. One thing that came up at the NGSS GLOBE workshop last week was that there was discussion of a document that would come out of this effort that would sort of have a two-way alignment, so that teachers could start with the NGSS assessment and then find the GLOBE activities, or they could start with GLOBE activities and go the other direction. So I thought that was pretty neat. The other thing that came out of it was that there is more than one, it looks like there's going to be more than one activity that meets each of the NGSS assessments. And so because of that, if there was a concept that wasn't clear to a teacher, like sound for instance, maybe there's another activity that is more comfortable for them that would still satisfy that NGSS goal. And so I think that's kind of exciting thing to remember about this effort. So I think that'll be a really positive thing to come out of this.
Nice, thanks. Susan Beach wrote how to fit 5Es with NGSS. And Lisa, do you want to speak to that? You said you've been trying to do that also.
Well, I don't necessarily have any grand solutions, but yeah, I think it's important that we try to do that, and so I'm excited that Susan mentioned it. And I'm wondering, does anyone else on the call have any strategies that they use for that?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
This is the president of the
Uh-oh. Hello?
Hello?
Well, we're hoping that some of our master teachers, when they start using GLOBE in the classroom, will facilitate doing that for us with their expertise. So we're hoping that that will help us out.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh.
Great. Thanks, Laura. There's a lot of back noise, though.
Should I write, maybe?
Yes, you can write.
I hope that person has the answer.
They probably do. One thing that I just appreciate from this conversation is just having the questions. I think I've gone to a lot of presentations where there's a lot of different answers, but I think just posing that question and seeing how other people are tackling it is really helpful too. Okay, so Jane says, it's important to remember that the 5E instructional model is for units rather than single lessons.
Mm.
It's a good point. Lisa, does that give you an answer? Or does the question get deeper now?
Well, so now I suppose I could ask, can we attribute a performance expectation to a unit as opposed to an individual lesson? What's the granularity of our implementation of the NGSS? Anyone?
Harold, I'm curious if you would like to add anything to this conversation. I know you have a lot of expertise in this.
Well, I didn't. Somebody asked for a research. Let me back up a step.
Sure.
The question about how to use the 5Es or apply the 5Es. The originator of 5Es, Roger Bybee, has just published through NSTA a brand new book called I believe it is, I've got it over here, but I can't, Translating NGSS into the Classroom Instruction. I believe that's the precise title. There you go.
That's it.
You got it. I even remembered it. And so there's a nice little template in there that that somewhere in the book. It's also in the Reader's Guide to the standards that I published through NSTA, where I stole it, plagiarized it with Roger's permission from his book, where the 5Es are down the left-hand side of the matrix, and across the top are the 3 dimensions of the standards, and then a way to think about your series of lessons. So I agree with the idea that it has to be a unit, not a single lesson. How you would progress through the 5Es, meet the learning goal that's been described, or at least referred to earlier, and incorporate in hopefully some sort of integrated way all 3 dimensions of the NGSS, the practices, the DCIs, and the cross-cutting concepts. So it doesn't tell you how to do it, but it certainly gives you a template and a format and a way to start thinking about designing a short unit based upon a learning goal that could come from GLOBE, and then of course using the 5E model as the basis of the matrix.
That's great. I just looked it up, and yeah, I think we should start an NGSS book club and read this for the next webinar.
I think that's a great idea. Harold, with that, I'm also curious if, as you meet with the various organizations or are speaking about this, what comes up around alignment challenges and needs, and any advice you have for addressing that?
Well, that's the looming issue is alignment, and I think you all are probably on the forefront, along with several others that are struggling with this issue right now. So I think part of our issue is we don't have a good set of shall we say, criteria or requirements for what alignment is. So every one of us is kind of building our own little protocol, shall we say, or criteria as we go along. I think the biggest issue is trying to make and I think maybe Matt alluded to this, trying to make the activity or the source, in this case is GLOBE, fit the NGSS shoe, which I think is always going to be problematic because NGSS is designed to really kind of craft or help schools and states craft a very comprehensive program. So GLOBE or any other group that brings to the alignment issue their own extant materials, it's going to have to think probably think a little larger than that. And I realize that may be beyond the scope of what you all are after, but or say this is the piece I've carved out of NGSS that I think I can contribute to the state or the school district's effort.
Sure.
But I think we have to be a little careful about sort of making our own stuff aligned rather than looking at it from the NGS perspective and says this is what the expectation is. Now, what's the resource or what's the series of resources that can be used to so-called meet the NGSS expectations? The other I think maybe misconception or distracting issue or confusing issue is what part of the NGS do you really look at when you think about alignment? It's too easy to look at the practices and say, I'm aligned with the practices, or look at the DCI and then do kind of a topic alignment as a lot of people do superficially and say, my topic is the same topic as I find there in the DCI, therefore I must be aligned. The true alignment and the issue that I think every classroom teacher or every group, whether it be state or a publisher that's developing instructional materials is going to face is how do I align with the performance expectation? And you don't align just by one-to-one correspondence with some activity and a performance expectation. You have to have probably a series, call it a unit if we will, instructional sequence, some series of days or activities that hopefully produce the outcome in the performance expectation. So the performance expectation is at the heart of alignment.
Sure.
Which is, I think, it's going to be an incredible challenge for all of us.
And that's a really good point. I know that was definitely a big conversation our groups had last week at the workshop. So I'm curious, anyone that's on the call that was at the alignment workshop, if you'd like to share what your group spoke about or how this conversation kind of took shape in your discussion.
Well, I can comment briefly about that. My group, I was working with the high school group, one of the high school groups last week, and we discovered that it was often easier to group our different GLOBE activities and measuring protocols about a specific performance expectation. And so we were finding that if you could group them together, you were actually seeing a stronger alignment than if you only just took one activity by itself. And so this kind of goes along with what was just said by Harold, I believe it was.
Yes. Great, thanks, Matt. Anybody else from the workshop last week?
Hey, it's Julie.
Hi.
Hey, I was also in the middle school group last week, and we did a similar thing that Matt did, in that we, after we finished going through and finding the different activities and protocols that fit the individual standards, we created, and you had us do this, where we created units that would align with a lot of them and actually hit a lot more topics that way. So it seemed that from our experience too, that grouping activities and protocols into units made a much stronger connection and actually hit more than one standard that way as well.
Excellent, thanks. And that fits into the nature of GLOBE also, that students are going to be going and doing an investigation, and so a lot of these things fit together as they do the investigation. Anybody else from the workshop or not? Anybody else want to share to this?
So Kristen, it's probably important to reiterate as well that we did look at all three dimensions when we were rating how well each activity met.
Yes.
So we did look at that.
Yes, good, thanks. Another thing that came up was, I know as we compile all of the feedback and we create the document, we're going to identify two things. One, the gaps and where GLOBE doesn't necessarily align, as well as different ways to build it together. And I know we got a lot of different feedback from the groups on both of those. And so I think this is going to, I think Marcy said that on the first day, that we don't necessarily want to say that we align everything to NGSS because the mission and vision of GLOBE is very specific. And so as we fit the gaps, maybe there's certain things that we could say, okay, well, we can create more learning activities or protocols, but also it's okay to say, well, this is how GLOBE fits, and it's up to someone else or another organization to fit other parts of this also. Janelle Johnson has a couple of comments. Okay, she says, but if the goal is for teachers to actually implement this, we have to be realistic. Very good point. There's already a huge resistance with CCSS, and the timing of this has to be considered in that context, and that teachers need to be provided time and space to actually work in groups. That's a great point, and that's also something that people spoke about at our workshop, was kind of the value was going through the process and to have those deep conversations and what does this really mean and what does this fit, and then each group would work on it and at the end would switch their product with another group, and so they got the feedback and would go through the process almost again. And so I don't know if anyone wants to speak about the valuable, how valuable it was to go through the actual process and being able to have time as a group to go through that. No? Maybe we just all say it's valuable?
I think I'll add that it was very difficult for our group that I was in to get our first rating sheet done. And then once we kind of got on a roll, we were doing good. But man, it took a long time to really think about the goal and then try to think about what activities would best fit. So I'm hoping that the result of this workshop is that we've done a lot of the hard work, and then teachers can spend time on what I think would be more of the fun part of putting the units together.
Sure. Yeah, it definitely seemed that each group took about the whole morning to do the very first one, but once that happened and things were, these conversations happened, it took a lot more shape faster. Was anyone else going to say anything?
This is Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Hi. So I was there.
Yeah, you were.
And I just want to, just in general, our group, I have to agree that the first one was probably the toughest one. But also what seemed to happen is the energy would go up and down in our group as well. And we would, in a way, get lazy about including activities that maybe didn't fit. And so it was really important to have our group dynamic to say, no, wait, why are you doing that? That one's not aligned. And so I think just the process of justifying it to each other was very helpful as well. And unless we really work on stressing the fact that we really need people to spend time on this, and that it's going to be a timed, it's going to take a lot of time to do it. And so I think that's what I learned after the 2.5 days, is that having a group working together and really focused on that and calling each other on these alignment things that maybe don't align is really important.
Excellent. Thank you. It's really, really important. It was definitely fun to see the groups kind of have that discussion and dialogue and hold each other accountable. So thanks for highlighting that. We'll move on to the third question. We have about 10 more minutes. We also have people on the call from other areas that may be new to GLOBE. I know we have UCAR and NREL and some universities. Laura, I see your hand is up, so I'm going to call on you first, but then we'll open it up to anyone else.
I just wanted to mention that as we put together these units and if we do the 5Es or anything like that, I think it's important that we share so that none of us are reinventing the wheel that somebody else has already done the work for.
Excellent. Great point. Thanks for raising your hand. I'll unmute you again if you have more to say. So I'd like to open it up to others in the room.
This is Susan. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Susan.
Oh, hi. We're actually doing this week meeting with the consultants who are putting our science curricula into what they call guides for learning. And of course, they have a standard format for all the other subjects. So we are really struggling with trying to keep the 3 dimensions alive in the entire concept, and that's at the same time making it look somewhat like the other subject guides so the teachers have a reference point. And this is what we're struggling with.
That's a really good point. I'm curious if anyone else can relate to that or is going through that with their organization.
But it did help a lot being there last week. I definitely had a leg up and a lot of questions about when it did seem like everything was being taken apart. It was like not using the standards at all, and so we were able to make sure that we are going to incorporate the practices and the cross-cutting concepts and not just throw them out the door and look at the PEs, which seems to be the easiest way to kind of deal with it when you're first looking at it.
Sure.
You can still hear me?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Matt, were you going to say something?
So, Kristen, I was wondering if this would be a good time to remind the audience that they still have an opportunity to contribute, even if they weren't at the workshop last week. Can you say something a little bit more about that and what the timeline is for the document and that it'll be circulated and so forth?
Sure, thanks. So we're going to work on the compiling all of the feedback and the information within the next month. I have a call with Marcy and Dave in 2 weeks, and so we'll figure out that plan to kind of go through all of the different feedback. And then once we have that document up, we'll have it up on the website, and we will definitely be asking for feedback from the community as well as people that may be out of GLOBE but are interested in providing that feedback or learning what we did and contributing to it somehow. So if you're interested, I could, let's see, I think I'll give you my email. I'll type it in here. So if you're interested, you could email me. And we'll also be providing updates on our website as well as our Facebook page and different social media things so that people do know that that product is up and that we're going through the review process. And from there, we have a couple different things. As I said, oops, I went to Janelle. Broadcast to all. No, that's Marcy. If you want any information from her about the alignment documents that she provided, that is my email. And so, as I mentioned, we will be going through all of the feedback and identifying gaps and giving suggestions to GLOBE how to move forward, as well as getting suggestions for future projects and future things that we can work on, and hearing from our community. Matt, did you have anything else to add to that?
And that was all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So a few more minutes. I wonder if anyone else would like to share what they're working on or what they're interested in with NGSS, future questions or things that they're searching for. Lisa, any final comments?
No, everyone's given me a lot to think about, though. I might rethink everything I'm doing. But thank you all.
Well, it's just helpful to have this dialogue and this conversation going, especially after being to certain workshops and things. I think it's helpful to kind of just name the process that we're going through and that we are figuring out what this is and learning to make this process better, learning how to do this process in professional development or with teachers or hopefully everyone when you're working with your organization or on a state level, learning from this process and also giving us feedback on different things that we can consider as GLOBE. And I just am really grateful for everyone's participation today. So again, you have my email if you have any future questions or comments or would like to participate. We will have webinars, I don't think in December, but January and February, where we discuss the product and the alignment process. And also on our website, we do have the past webinars that we spoke about, the theory going into the alignment process. Any final comments?
Thanks so much, Kristen.
Thank you. Matt, Lisa, Laura, it was wonderful to have your participation. Thank you so much for talking about your experiences and questions and providing your expertise for this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To the audience, too.
Carol, we're also grateful that you were able to participate today, and thank you for providing your expertise with us. It's really helpful, and it's an honor that you were able to be here with us today, too.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Please stand by.